Yudhajit Basu is an FTII student who has made award-winning films and documentaries on socially relevant subjects. Invited to prestigious international events, Basu is not just a filmmaker but also editor of a magazine called Shabdo on poetry. Revered as a short film maker, his filmography includes Kalsubai, Gulnara, Quiro, Khoji, and Abhar, amongst many more. Welcome to Meri Kahani, Yudhajit. So tell me, what made you get into FTII? Who influenced you? What was the inspiration? Were you from Calcutta or were you from some other city?
Well, I was from Calcutta and initially I joined engineering. But after doing 1 year, I gave it up because I realized it was not my cup of tea. Then I joined Xaviers mass communication videography, which is like a mini FTII, you can say, where we learn filmmaking in a much smaller sense. And I was very kind of decided that I want to be a filmmaker, but I didn't have any kind of thought of joining a film school. After passing out of Xaviers, I made one short film and with my own company and my own crew. And I took the exam of SRFTI. At the time, FTI was not taking exam. I couldn't get in. And then I was very sad, of course. I went for Jamia Millia and all other places. I couldn't get in. And finally, in 2017 FTI, I reopened the examination. I gave it a shot and I ranked first there. I got in. And inspiration was, I was from a very early stage in my school days, I was very sure that I want to be a filmmaker. And in a Bengali family where I've been raised, people do know about film school, about Pune because of Ritik Ghatak and all the tradition surrounding the place. So I was quite aware of FTI from a very early age, but I didn't know that I want to go there, which happened quite organically. I just went for an exam. So yeah, in 2017, I joined FTI and from there, things have changed because it has really shaped me and how I used to look at films earlier. There is a fundamental change after being in FTI. I was exposed to a lot of other kind of stuff that I have never seen before. So yeah.
But first, to begin with, what was that changing moment in your life as a child or as an adolescent? What was that film that made an impact on you that you were so sure at such a young age that you want to be a filmmaker?
Oh yeah, that was very interesting. I mean, initially there was no such particular film. What used to happen is that when I was a very young guy, I used to watch a lot of old commercial Bengali films with my grandparents. And my grandparents really had a lot of memories with those films because those films used to get released when they were, quoting each other. So to tell me stories of the songs and what memory they have with those songs. So I was very close to that kind of Uttam Kumar, Suchitra Sen ka, whatever we call it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, golden period of Bengali cinema. So that was my real exposure to cinema in the beginning. But later, I found myself attracted to world cinema because of my father, especially. He introduced me to, Bergman, Kurosawa, and Godard, and all these kind of filmmakers of the 60s and the 70s. But then my co-writer and my friend, who is also a partner in my company, Vijay, with whom I actually co-write, he one day told me about a film called Once Upon a Time in Anatolia by the Turkish filmmaker Nuribel Gajalan, which I watched in 2014. By that time, I'd already watched all kind of films. I knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker, but that particular film was really, really a very changing moment. And I remember having seen it over a period of the night. Started watching it at 1 in the morning, and the film ended when it was 4. And interesting, the film itself is also unfolding in a night. And that experience of that, having watched that first Jalan film, was something very, very different from me. Even I hadn't seen anything like that before, despite having watched quite a bit of world cinema. And that struck a chord somewhere. It happens that you suddenly identify, yeah, this is someone who is speaking something that I can really relate to. And that stayed with me. And I think that was kind of a changing moment, the way I look at films or how I want to make them and all sorts of things. So that particular night when I watched Anatolia, that was quite a changing moment.
What were the changes you saw in yourself while you were at the institute, or you are at the institute? What kind of an influence did your peer group have on you? What about the masters who are teaching you? The environment, living in a hostel in Pune, how is all that different?
Well, number one, I don't live in a hostel. I live in an apartment outside I mean, just very close to the institute. And so I don't really have that experience of a hostel life, but of course, I frequently go there and I spend most of my time in the campus. And I have, it's like almost like whatever I have learned, little bit, it's mainly from my batchmates. And the most important thing of FTI is that the fact that I'm working or I'm studying with kind of a mini India. I mean, there are people from so many backgrounds, so many cultural background, social background, class background. It is almost like a mini map of India. You know, in our direction department, there's one guy from Orissa, there's one guy from Telangana, there's one guy from Bengal and all Bihar, all sorts of things. And also there are five Bengalis. I mean, I don't know how in my batch. So that's very, very liberating on one hand. We really get kind of liberated. And I have learned mainly, I mean, there's one particular teacher, two teachers rather, our ex-head of the department, Mr. Sandeep Chatterjee, and our ex-professor, both of them don't teach here anymore, Mr. Twinav Majumdar, who is also a renowned filmmaker. These two teachers have really taught me a lot. Taught me in the sense more than filmmaking, their way of life, their philosophy of life that have moved me, that have really inspired me to carry on, because independent filmmaking in a world like today is quite a lonely journey, to be very honest. So these people, they have really, and they keep on doing it. I mean, I always keep in touch with them. They always inspire me, and I always find a hope that, okay, I can carry forward, I can carry on. And so far as my batchmate is concerned, there are many, I mean, I'm indebted to them. They have really opened me up to a lot of other stuff that I have no clue. For example, more than cinema, what FTI and my batchmates here have really helped me to open up is about literature. So there is this friend, Mr. Shamudro, who is my batchmate, and Obro. These two people have opened me up to a world of literature, which I was very kind of alien to. Like, you know, people like Ryzer Kapuscinski, Sibold, all journalistic writings, all kinds of non-fiction writing. So these were things I had no clue of. I was only, you know, interested in fiction filmmaking, and that was the film I knew. But after joining FTI, I was opened up to the whole world of documentary, non-fiction, and many other art forms like video art, like video essay, installations.
So how was your first film born?
Well, my first film is definitely not an FTI. My first film was in St. Xaviers when I was, you know, I think, was 20 or something. So when I joined Xaviers, it's a terrible film that I've made, and definitely no one has seen it. So that was the first time in roughly 2015, I guess, yeah, or 14 maybe. Me and my friend Saurabh from Calcutta. So we had a wheelchair and a DSLR, and we had just seen Jean-Luc Godard's, you know, Breathless. And we were very young, and we thought that, okay, if Godard could do it, a tracking shot on a wheelchair, why can't we? And I was very inspired by New Wave at the time, and I often, you know, I had a fascination for sunglasses. So I wanted to have round glasses because Godard wears it. And I just wanted to, you know, be like them, their lifestyle and all sorts of things. So we had that wheelchair and the camera, and I had my car, so we made a film. And that film had a lot of dialogues, a lot of cheesy lines, you know, people killing each other. So that was that. Though it's completely trash, but that was my first film, and I am very close to it somehow. So yeah, though no
So
one
what
has.
happened? after joining FTII, which is the film you made?
After joining FC in FTI, we keep on making films. Like we have small exercises which we keep on making all the time. But the main project that is like the main project is the dialogue project, which is a studio-based project where we have to make a 10-minute conversation film. The whole idea is to make a 10-minute film where through dialogue you tell something. So that was Gulnara. That was the first film of FTI.
Okay. And after that, after Gulnara?
After Gulnara, I was
what does Gulnara mean?
It means flowers in Kashmiri.
Flowers. Okay, Gulmohar.
Gulmohar, like that, yeah.
Okay. So after Gulnara, which was your second film at the FTI?
My second film after Gulnara was Kalsubai, the documentary.
Okay. What inspired you to make Kalsubai? Because it's given you a lot of recognition.
Yeah, it was, we were taken to a place called Bhandardara, 5 of us, and we were asked to choose a subject within 2 days, which itself is like kind of very difficult for me. So I was roaming around the place and I was clueless because I had not made documentary before and I really had no idea what to do about it. So I was taking a lot of photographs and one day I met one person at a tea stall, a chaiwala's. He was telling me, I was just asking him about his life and everything, and he was telling me, have you gone to the peak of Kalsubai, which is the highest mountain range? I knew that it was the highest mountain peak in Maharashtra. It's called Kalsubai. And then I said, no, I have heard of it. Then he was telling me the story of that mountain, how that name came to being. That there was once a girl who went uphill and started staying on the top of the mountain all alone. So that was the first line I heard from that chaiwala. And that kind of intrigued me a lot. And I asked that, who is this girl? Then he said there is a deity that we all consider very sacred here. Her name is Kalsu. Then I kind of started my research, went to various villages, started documenting things, and I understood that it's basically a tribal deity, you see. And it's the story of tribal deity which had later been appropriated as an incarnation of Parvati. So initially, I thought that the film will be how strategically the tribal identity, even of a goddess, is being appropriated, through the mainstream culture. But then somehow later I found that when I'm making a film for 20 minutes, and since I am a photographer, I like to shoot images, so I want to tell the story in a different way. Because I found the conventional documentary, now documentary has changed, of course, there's many ways of doing it, but the very conventional mode of using interviews, that informative kind of documentary, I realized I don't want. So I chose a kind of a different style where I told my team that let's consider this film as a photo book on film. And then my cinematographer, Rachit, he said that we should do something then about the aspect ratio. And I wanted to do a 4:3. He said that we can do it in 1:1, it'll go with the feel of the film. And also because the whole idea of geometry and tribal wisdom, they have certain link, throughout history. We were studying a lot of African paintings, African tablets and Bones tribe tablets, their inscriptions. And we found there's a lot of symmetry in those inscriptions or wherever they put their, lines and stuff. So then we chose that kind of a little unusual aspect ratio.
I have seen the film, and yes, the frames are very attractive and it's almost poetic. What was the third film after Kalsubai?
Well, after Kalsubai, I have been writing mainly. I wrote 2 feature films, of which one got selected in NFDC and the other I'm currently working on, and I'm applying with my 2 producers we're applying to various places. And I made a very small film, which is a long take project in FTI. Like you have to make a single shot film, which I think I've shared it with you. It's called Clouds. It's about one pregnant woman in a distant village in the Western Ghats. That's the film. And then I made 2 explorers of distant lands. So these are not yet shown anywhere because I've just completed. And mainly I'm working on my feature and my prepping for my diploma.
So, Yudhajit, you are one of the rare FTII students who has not yet graduated but has a good body of work. You have done short films, you've done documentaries, you're working on feature, you write, and you are also the editor of a magazine. Why don't you tell us something about Shabdo and how it was born?
Oh, yes, I feel very emotional if I have to tell you about Shabdo because I no longer run it. I mean, I cannot run it anymore because when I was in Calcutta, it's a little magazine on poetry, Bengali poetry. And in Calcutta, we have a very long history and tradition of little magazines. You see, all the great writers have begun their career from little magazine. So, and my father actually used to run this magazine in the 80s with his friends, and then they had to stop it because each one of them joined different profession and stuff like that. In 2013, when I was in Xaviers, I decided to revive the magazine, and because the magazine has a very interesting thing of the size. It's not the normal size of a magazine. It's almost like a newspaper, that big. So I
Broadsheet.
was, yeah, it's almost like, which we call in Bengali, the size has a very interesting name called double dimai. So that kind of very visually attracted me also. And then I was writing a lot of poems at the time. So I began to revive the magazine. And of course, I talked to these old friends of my father who were associated with Shabdo when it was released in 80s. One of them was Mr. Krishnendu Chak. He was a very quite renowned commercial artist in Calcutta now. His first illustration was published in Shabdo. So I told him that why don't we do the covers again? Why don't you do the covers again? And he kind of agreed. We started, we carried it on for 4 years quite successfully. And I had an opportunity of meeting many poets in Calcutta. And I was also writing. But then when I came to Pune, I realized that it's not possible to run a magazine like that, staying in Pune. And we had no plans for doing a digital version. So we were also publishing books under the banner of Shabdo, which had stopped after I came to Pune. But of course, when I have in plan that whenever I get some time, I want to again go back to it and revive it and maybe do a digital version of it as well.
So, what are those poets doing whose poetry you were publishing in the magazine and now they are not there? The paper
No,
is
they
not.
have in Calcutta. There are lots of little magazines. They get published every year. There's like a huge amount of magazines which come up, and there's this quite a big readership also. So they're writing poems. I mean, it's not that they were only writing for Shabdo. They're writing for many other little magazines. You see, but we could kind of found a place or mark among the other magazines, especially because of the visual content, the way the covers were designed by Mr. Christian Chaki, and the way we designed the magazine, that was something quite unique. But then there's a lots of great magazines which get published every year, and all my poet friends are writing, and many of my friends in FTI are poets as well, and one of them have written in Shabdo before also. So
So, my
yeah.
last question to you is that you have been a poet, now you choose to kind of pause it. You're a filmmaker, you do all kinds of movies, and you write also. What is your first love out of all these?
Well, it keeps changing, to be very honest. It keeps changing all the time. Poetry is something that I can write only when I'm very sad. But I think my first love will be photography. That's the most liberating thing that gives me a lot of pleasure whenever I do it. So that's my first love.
So, congratulations, Yudhajit. I think you are multi talented, have too much inside you, a lot of fire, and you have to just channelize it and conquer the world.
Thank you so much for inviting me for this lovely talk. I feel so honored. And yeah, thank you so much. Looking forward to having such conversations later with you as well.
Thank you for tuning in. If you have liked this episode, do comment. Do rate on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Hubhopper, Castbox, Spotify, JioSaavn so that you get notified when we come next. Stay tuned for the next episode with yet another guest. And until then, take great care of yourself.